The Edmonton Oilers aren't living up to expectations. Chief amongst them, the veteran supporting cast.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. This is my 10th season doing digital hockey content, my third as a host here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So you could say I've seen some underachieving, mediocre teams in my time doing hockey content. I want to thank everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. On today's show, we are going to approach the conversation about why the Oilers are failing from three different perspectives. First, opening segment, we're going to take an extended period of time talking about the bottom six and why it isn't working the way it was designed and one of the real trait flaws amongst that cohort. Our second segment, we'll talk about the Oilers' ability to create offense consistently. And then in our final segment, I'm going to put some context around all of those numbers. We'll talk about why the Oilers keep getting so unlucky and, frankly, what it means for the big picture. So to start out, NHL teams are unique in the way their roster is put together in comparison to the other sports. Because we're operating with lines and pairs, these cycles are unique in that everybody's going to need to play at some point. And the workload being distributed the way it is often tells you a lot. And of course, in an ideal world, you would like to build your team like Canada or the United States will in the Olympics in a month or so and have four lines of NHL caliber all-stars who can put the puck in the back of the net at will, can forecheck, can cycle, and play dominant hockey. But because there is a salary cap, because there is a finite amount of talent in the NHL, teams do need to employ a variety of players. And when you look at the Oilers' bottom six on paper, it leaves a lot to be desired in terms of actual results. But when you go and look at it in terms of just the names, the experience, the credibility, Adam Henrique, more than 10 years in the league. Mattias Janmark, long-term veteran. Curtis Lazar, long-time veteran. Trent Frederick, long-time veteran. Connor Clattenburg is an outlier there as a younger guy. And then Nuge has been there at points this year as a third-line center. But all of this is to say, for the first month and change of the season, first 2 months even, the Oilers' bottom six was largely defined by its inability to do much of anything. We talked about it on yesterday's show. The Oilers are getting outscored 33-13 in the non-Connor McDavid Draisaitl minutes this year, and chief amongst that is the third and fourth line. So the most common line in their bottom six so far this year, and I know Matthew Savoie has been in the top six for about 2 weeks now, so you can take some of these numbers with a grain of salt, but you also need to account for the fact that Matthew Savoie was really helping on that third line, even though the results weren't that good. So to start out, number one issue for me in the way this lineup has been assembled is a lack of raw foot speed. And thanks to the NHL's Edge tool, which anybody can access, it's publicly available data, they can tell you just how fast guys skate, how much distance they cover, how hard their shot is. The Oilers' bottom six on paper is not working because there is a genuine lack of speed. Trent Frederick and Adam Henrique are both below average skaters in terms of top skating speed and are below average in that medium range 20 to 22 mile an hour speed bursts. Matthew Savoie, 65th percentile top speed, 73rd percentile middle range, 31 attempts in that middle range. So Matthew Savoie has some raw foot speed, and you've seen him use said foot space to create space for himself, especially in the top six where he's fit a little more naturally, a player with that skill set, top 10 pick, someone who's played in the top six in the AHL for an extended period of time. This is a player who has a track record at lower levels. And generally, you would expect a certain level of that threshold to be met. Now, just because you played well in the AHL doesn't mean it'll happen in the NHL, but you get what I'm saying here. If you can perform everywhere along the way to where you are eventually, the expectation is that with time, you will figure out how to operate in that way. But continuing on, the real issue for me comes down to the results and deployment combination, that twofold. So if you'll excuse me while I read off my notes here. Trent Frederick, 44% of his ice time against fourth lines. Adam Henrique, 42% of his ice time versus fourth lines. Frederick, 29% against middle sixers. Henrique, 32% against middle sixers. Savoie, His numbers are ticking in the other direction because he has been promoted, but in the aggregate, 34% against fourth lines, 31% against middle, and then 33% against other teams' first line players. In the aggregate, the results aren't awful when Savoie has been deployed with them. 50% of the scoring chances, 50% of the shots on goal, 50% of the goals, even though it's a very low number, it's 1 goal for, 1 goal against, 48% of the high danger chances, 48% of the expected goals, 47% of the high danger chances, 5.8% shooting, and then a 941 save percentage. So that tells me, at the very least, they've had the puck a decent bit in their minutes when they've been deployed together. But without Matthew Savoie, Henrique and Frederick take an absolute nosedive. 41% of the scoring chances, 42% of the shots on goal, 25% of the goals, 31% of the expected goals, 17% of the high danger chances, and they are getting bludgeoned in terms of their shooting percentage, which is only 7.1, and their save percentage, 8.46. Fundamentally, Matthew Savoie was keeping that third line afloat. And when Jack Roslovic was healthy, that third line was passable. I wouldn't say it was good. I wouldn't say it was great, but it was passable. It was evens in terms of goal differential. And for a third line, that's reasonable. For a third line to tread water at 5-on-5, to not actively harm you, and have some upside in the potential of Savoie, that's encouraging. But sitting here now, down to Jack Roslovic, looking at the way this lineup is taking shape, that bottom six is in rough shape as far as game control, in terms of functionality. They don't offer a lot in terms of winning hockey. They can go out there and create empty calorie offense, dump, cycle, chase. They don't have the capacity to really tilt the game. With their lack of foot speed, in particular Henrique and Frederick, they are limited in their capacity to slow the game down. And that's the irony here. In an ideal world, Henrique, Frederick, and whatever winger you happen to throw at them, if you put Nudes down the middle, if you throw someone else with them and you kick Henrique back to the middle, those guys don't have the foot speed to be a dump and chase, grinded out line the way you would typically like. In an ideal world, your top six is going to be creating in transition, high-end rushes, looking to get those cross-team passes, dangerous offense, the type of stuff that really makes the puck go in the net. And then your bottom six comes in as reinforcements. They cycle the puck well. They buy offensive zone time. They take heat off of your defense. And they play a low-risk, low-event style with upside. Now that you've had to move Savoie up because of injury, and to be fair, you can't account for that many injuries in your lineup. And Savoie, I think, has the capacity to be a pretty solid NHL top sixer. But right now, the Oilers need offense today. This is not a question of, well, eventually it'll come around. Yeah, sure, eventually it'll come around. Are you still going to be competitive? Are you still going to be in the mix for a playoff spot by the time everything comes around? And that's the conundrum here, if you're an Oiler fan or if you're on this team. The roster is not working as it's constructed. McDavid and Draisaitl, when they have played together, are dead even. They have scored 9 goals. The Oilers' opposition has scored 9 goals. The rest of the lineup, without one of those guys on the ice, less than a 30% goal share. The Oilers are in the absolute deepest of fecal matter as far as their offense goes. And because their offense is not living up to expectations, they are predicated on being an offensive team. Their defense does not have the capacity. And look, coming into the year, I would have said the defense needed to pick up the slack. But you watch the team play defense and you know that's not the reality. On paper, Ekholm, Bouchard, Nurse, I know Wallman's hurt right now, so that's not a fair comp, but those 4 should have been playing pretty good hockey. And then Emberson and Kulak, but Kulak has gotten his doors blown off. Emberson doesn't seem to have taken any real steps towards improving beyond what he was last year, and he was fine. But the Oilers need more out of him. They need more out of Alec Regula, who probably is overmatched playing on a second pair with Nurse against quality opposition. But with all that said, we are going to take our first break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers, and we're going to dive into the numbers and explain why the Oilers' offense isn't working as designed. Frankly, why it's a cause for concern. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is the best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot. defenses tighten up, or a momentum-swinging turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust after every play, player props that adjust as guys heat up. You can bet the next touchdown scorer, drive results, game totals, and so much more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. Tonight, really important game in the NFC playoff picture in the NFL. The Cowboys coming off a big Thanksgiving win, which was reportedly the most watched game in the history of the NFL on Thanksgiving against the Chiefs. And the Lions coming off a loss to the Packers. Both teams firmly in that NFC wildcard hunt. The Lions are 3-point home favorites. If you want to be right in the middle of the action, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. The game moves fast, so can you. Thank you so much to everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we've got your team covered every single day. Locked On is the #1 sports podcast network. So, continuing on with this conversation, coming into the year, I expected the defense to do more of the heavy lifting. Based on the commitment to Jake Wallman, who's a pretty good number 3. I think the Oilers were supposed to be that defense-first team, like we were saying, with Wallman as the number 3 and your pseudo Ryan McDonough from Tampa Bay or Shea Theodore in Vegas. You're looking for that number 3, that guy who on a bad team would be a number 1 or 2, but on a good team falls down to your third pair. But Darnell Nurse has continued to be his typical volatile self. I cannot realistically ask better play of him. I know what he is at this point. He is an extremely high risk, pretty low reward player that doesn't offer much as far as upside goes. And the Oilers are pot committed to him. They cannot get rid of him. I think there is a real conversation to be had. Can the Oilers find a way to get rid of him? But right now, they're in the thick of it. They don't have the opportunity to wait and hope for Nurse to come around. And that's why I keep talking about the offense. And I know so much of the conversation about the Oilers this year has been the goaltending and been about the defense. But this is more likely. I think the Oilers have a better chance of their offense coming around should Chris Knobloch find the right permutation of forwards and maybe be a bit more aggressively, stylistically, to create more dangerous offense. I think there's a world where the Oilers could find a way to get more out of their existing group. But beyond that, the numbers at face value are middling. 27 games played, 81 goals, comes out to 3 goals per game. That is 17th in the NHL. This is a team with McDavid and Draisaitl and Bouchard and Nuge and Hyman. Just on paper, the Oilers need to be scoring at a higher rate. 17th in the league. Teams ahead of them include the Sabres, the Jets, the Bruins, the Penguins, the Blackhawks. None of those teams are particularly good. Well, those are all teams, other than the Jets, I would say, who didn't have expectations of making the postseason this year. And maybe the Jets turn it around. I know Hellebuck's out. That's a different conversation. But right now, the Oilers are pot committed to a core that is not meeting expectations. The Oilers do not get enough from the non-McDavid Draisaitl guys. So McDavid has 36, Draisaitl has 31 points, so they have 67. Of the Oilers' 81 goals, McDavid and Draisaitl have combined to contribute on 83% of them. Between assists and goals, 2 of them. 83% of the team's overall goals are represented by just those 2 players. They have contributions. Of course, you want your best players to do that. You want them to carry the load. But when you go down this lineup and you look at these stat sheets, it is ugly. There is not a lot of offense here. There is just not enough going on in terms of actual goals or in terms of volume. You know, Draisaitl's at 15, McDavid's at 11, Roslovic's at 10. Roslovic was playing out of his mind before he got hurt. The next closest is Nuge with 6. Nurse has 5. Bouchard has 4. Podkolzin has 4. Mangiapane has 4. Wallman only has 3. Savoie has 3. And then a whole lot of guys with 2, 1, and 0. This is a team that is paying for goals. They are committed to McDavid and Draisaitl for almost $30 million combined going into the future. And that's fine. Those guys are living up to their end of the bargain. Hyman misses the first month and change of the season. He needs a little bit of time to ramp up. Fine. I can be patient. Nuge started off hot, was really the only guy going those first 2 or 3 weeks of the season when the team wasn't playing very well, but has subsequently cooled off, especially as he's been bumped from that first line, playing in the lower lineup. Nuge is not at the point in his career where he's going to be able to drive offense. And frankly, I want to see more out of that supporting cast, whether that's Savoie, whether that's Frederick, Henrique. I would love to see Ike Howard get a shot in the next week or so again. He's playing pretty well down in the A. But the Oilers are not playing well enough. And when your team isn't living up to expectations, it can be a few different things. You could be dealing with injuries. You could be dealing with style issues like the Oilers are dealing with right now. I want to see this team embrace the problem. They are not creating enough offense overall, volume-wise. They are not getting to the offensive zone enough. They are not generating dangerous enough offense. All of the little pieces that go into being a sound hockey team, they're not present right now. Right now, the Oilers are a team relying on splash plays. You know what, speaking of football, that reminds me of, the Oilers are very reminiscent of what the Eagles are doing right now. Where on paper, you have Jalen Hurts, you got Saquon, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert. You got all of this talent. You got the 2 all-pro tackles. I know Lane Johnson's out. Humor me. You have 4 or 5 all-world players at important positions. But the vibes are not right. The efficiency is not there. And they are overly reliant on the A.J. Brown bomb play, the Saquon Barkley home run rushing attempt. Right now, if the Oilers don't get 3 combined goals from McDavid and Draisaitl per night, they're not scoring enough to win. And it's great. They're scoring 3 per game. They're not in the bottom 10 in the league. But realistically, they're on pace to miss the playoffs based on the goal-scoring output they're generating right now. I'm inclined to think Zach Hyman will find a way to get going a little bit more than he is, but he hasn't exactly come on fire in terms of goal-scoring. Hitting guys and this energy, all that stuff is great. Hyman looks right. He just hasn't found the goal-scoring touch. I think there's a chance that comes around. Nuge, I think, is prone to streaks. He's a little more of a hot and cold guy. He's a bit more of a conduit now. He's not going to conduct the electricity on his own, but he can help guys around him who are doing the heavy lifting. And ultimately, the Oilers are going to reach an impasse, and that's what we'll talk about in our final segment. But with each passing day, the questions are becoming answers in of themselves. The questions like, who's going to save us? Well, if no one saves us, what happens? Really quickly, you start to see how this conversation pivots to becoming something ugly, awkward, and uncomfortable, especially after the way the offseason went, with how prolonged the McDavid stuff was, with how difficult it was to find an upgraded net, or the Oilers' just outright refusal to upgrade a net. And all of this is to say, there is still plenty of time. But I'm starting to get tired of saying the Oilers are running out of time. The Oilers need to make some changes. And coming up next on today's edition of Locked On Oilers, I'm going to put all of the team's struggles into their proper context. And I'm going to tell you why the Oilers might be looking down the barrel of a loss season. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, my energy, and my mood. That's why I've been using Drip Drop. It's doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power, no matter what my day looks like. Drip Drop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. I love using Drip Drop as part of my daily routine. I like to get started on my New Year's resolutions in December. It's a moral superiority thing, but one of the things I've been working on is streamlining my morning routine, not using my phone first thing in the morning, trying to drink a little bit of water, get up and about, walk around, get out of bed. And I've been adding Drip Drops packets to my water every morning. 8 to 12 ounces does the job. Most importantly, it tastes amazing. My go-to flavor is peach, and it's my secret weapon for staying sharp and energized through long days. And it's a nice treat to start the day. Hydration has always been a non-negotiable for me. Drip Drops help me take it to a whole nother level. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 20% off. Stock up now for the winter bulk. You will thank me later. Keep your body and mind performing at their best with Drip Drop. Thank you so much to everyone hanging out on this Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers. We will have our Friday edition of the show for you guys as soon as the game tonight goes final. Hopefully the Oilers are able to mount some type of sustained offense and look better than they have over the last few weeks, because I'm going to be honest with you guys. I am starting to not see a path here, and there are a few ways this can go. This can go 2015, 2016 Penguins, where you fire the coach, you turn it around, you reorganize around the two generational talents, you prosper. This could go the way of the Nashville Predators, where one by one your supporting cast leaves. You're left with a few really good veterans, your Pekka Rinne, your Josi Saros, your Roman Josi, your Philip Forsberg, but you lose what makes your team good. You look at Washington post-Stanley Cup. Those guys trickle in and out. You look at Dallas between making the playoffs a bunch under Ken Hitchcock and Lindy Ruff, missing the playoffs, coming back. And point being, there is a real sliding doors opportunity to change the narrative about this team, to find a way to not succumb to the trajectory right now. And just because it's happened does not mean the future is preordained. I always go back to that quote from Robert Pattinson's character in Tenet. And I know Tenet gets a bad rap, especially in the Nolan universe, when you compare it to things like Inception, the Dark Knight trilogy, Memento, Oppenheimer, of course. And I'm sure we'll be having this conversation next summer. I'll say the Odyssey in there as well. But you look at this team, and the results have not been there, and it's really easy to point them out. 869 team save percentage, worst in the NHL. Their starter, Stuart Skinner, is 25th in goals saved above expected, bottom 7 among starters. Their backup is the third worst goalie in the entire NHL of goalies who have played so far this year. Pickard is 71st in goals saved above expected against. And then we've talked a lot over the last 2 weeks. My everydayers are probably sick of me saying this. Good teams manufacture their own luck. How do you manufacture luck? You put yourself in an advantageous position over and over again. You consistently make the right plays. Eventually, you start to get bounces. And we talked about that a lot in relation to the game the other night that they lost 1-0. The Oilers didn't play a bad game against Minnesota, but they couldn't buy a bounce because the offense was pretty inefficient. Only 7-8 high danger chances out of 50-plus scoring chances overall. You didn't do the hard work. And they generated a few power plays. That's great and all, but they're 18th in shooting percentage in all situations. At 5-on-5, they're 27th in shooting percentage. They're generating 2.4 power plays per game, which is bottom 5 in the league. 17% of their scoring chances are credited as high danger by natural stat tricks measures. All of this is to say, when you are not playing as well as you can, you don't get those lucky bounces. You don't start to make plays by virtue of good fortune. The analytics community, which includes me, loves to talk about if you hit certain benchmarks, you can expect things to turn back around, the performance will come. Right now, the Oilers are playing low event hockey. They are in games with not a lot of chances either way, and when their star players don't swing the game, the Oilers are left waiting around. They are hoping one of their star players can swing a game on their own. They are hoping Connor Clattenburg in his 9-10 minutes a game can manufacture some energy, excite the guys into playing a little bit better. But the Oilers are living on the margins right now. They are playing for loser points. They are dragging games into the deep end without the capacity to get out of there. And the problem for the Oilers, help is not coming. You can say all you want, goalie, top 6, whatever your top priority for this team to add is, whatever you think it is. The Oilers are in no rush. Prices right now, probably pretty bad as far as trades go, because A, teams know the Oilers need a goalie. Worst save percentage in the league through 2 months, a backup, and Calvin Pickard, who's probably an AHL goalie at this point, is their tandem. This team has as high of expectations as you could possibly imagine. And they aren't playing great hockey at 5-on-5. Their power play, which is second, third best in the league, first best in the league, depending on the night you listen to this, gets ply its craft 2 times a game. And it's great they're converting at 30%, but that's once every 2 games if they only get 2 per game, if we round down from 2.4. There is enough here, potential-wise, that they should not be this bad. And I think Nuge getting going will help. I don't know to what degree yet. I'm very curious to see what his 5-on-5 impacts look like come the summer. But I am at a point now where I don't have answers for getting this right because help's not on the way. If you want to recall Ike Howard, sure. More than happy. Kid's doing well in the A. I think that's the type of swing you're going to have to make. If you want to try Connor Ingram in a few weeks to see how he's going to fare against NHL talent after a long rehab stint in the A, sure. But those are not saviors. And that's fundamentally the problem with a team that is as leveraged to the moment as the Oilers are. The Oilers are built to win right now. They are a veteran-laden, expensive team that is top-heavy. When their star players do not perform, or dominate, I should say, because the counting stats are fine, if they don't dominate, the depth does not have the capacity to outplay poor metrics. So especially when we're going to load Connor and Leon up together for a period and a half because we're down 1 goal, and they can't score. And it's not for a lack of trying. They played well against Minnesota. But if they don't score, I'm not banking on Henrique. I'm not banking on Nuge. Depth guys are depth guys for a reason. But the Oilers are so top-heavy, they don't have the proper level of depth throughout their lineup. This team is missing another 20-goal scorer, maybe even as many as 2. You think about losing Perry in his 18, Connor Brown in his 10. Right there, that's 30 goals that went out the door you did not replace. Even if you want to say Mangiapane, Frederick, all right, that's 20. That's 20 out of 30. That doesn't account for the other guys you lost too. All of this to say, the Oilers do not play well enough to get lucky. Because they're not getting lucky, all of these games feel like the inevitable, what is going to go wrong tonight? And when your goalie has an .869 save percentage and you only go to the power play twice a game, it's really hard to feel like the tide is going to turn. And it's going to require a wholesale change. That's coaching. That's lineup construction. The Oilers don't have cards to play. I suppose you could fire the coach if you want to bring in Pete DeBoer. That's probably your only card to play beyond restructuring the lineup and trying to adjust your tactics a little bit. Because right now, the Oilers simply aren't cutting it. And we talked about it offensively. We talked about it from goaltending. We talked about it special teams. This group needs to get more from what it has because help, even if it does eventually come, is weeks away, maybe months away. That's too long to be waiting around with each passing day as the teams in front of you pull away. That will do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much to everyone that made Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network where we've got your team covered every day. And Locked On is the #1 sports podcast network. Subscribe to Locked On Oilers wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave the show 5-star review. Greatly appreciated. If you're over on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We're creeping up there. We're going to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of the season. Hopefully, it doesn't take a mutiny and a goalie change to make it happen. But if we get there, we get there. Wouldn't complain. Be sure to check out Locked On NHL and Locked On NHL Game Night, where the guys are breaking down every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned in June. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. I'll talk to you guys tonight after the game against Seattle. Until then, let's go Oilers.